Well, hey there, everybody. It's so good to be back with you. And I am attempting to get your comments and connections here right now. It is requiring me to go through all kinds of verifications and all of that. And so if you just excuse me while I try and connect with your comments, because I want to spend some time talking with you today, that should do it. And let's see, I have to identify crosswalks. By the way, welcome to Thursday Live. If you're a guest, I don't always start with my face in the computer here, but I need to identify crosswalks. And I have just done that. And now I have to identify tractors. Oh my goodness. How many have ever done this? When I get on, I'll be able to connect with you on this. Let's go. It says next. Now I have to select all the squares with bicycles. Oh my goodness, I wasn't expecting this. And I should be done now. Oh my, all right. I'm gonna do one more and then see if I can get through it. Yeah. All right, it's not working. So I am going to be done. All right, chimneys, verify. All right, there we go. It's loading. I'm going to get you. Ha ha. Thanks for putting up with that. Hooray, the chat is waiting for new messages, and hopefully you guys are coming up. There you go. You look like you're doing better. Gina Myers, thank you. I am. Now I'm back with you. I'm able to read your comments. So happy you're feeling better. Beverly Hover, thanks, Bev. I really appreciate that so very, very much. I actually had an elders meeting earlier today. And for those of you who are guests, welcome to Thursday Live. Thursday Live is a community where we get to, every Thursday night, connect with each other for a breakaway spiritual moment to encourage each other. But I'm the senior pastor of Northridge Church, and many of you who gather with me on Thursday Live are from Northridge. And so I had an elders meeting earlier this evening, and they said the same thing. They said, well, you look better than your announcement about having COVID made you look. And so, yep, I'm feeling better. The truth is, you know how sometimes you can make yourself look better than you really feel? But the truth is, I am feeling very, very good. And all the symptoms of my COVID experience are past. There's a little residue. Every once in a while, I have a little cough. And my taste and smell haven't returned yet. And but man, my energy, the way I feel, it's terrific. And so I just want to say, Brand sounds like he's doing better. Thanks, Gail Neal. Looking great. So happy you're better. Thank you. And to every single one of you, your greetings are there. And so what I thought I would do on this Thursday Live, and for those of you who are gathered and you're a part of the Thursday Live community, you probably know this. For those of you who are guests or don't gather that often, you probably don't. But I do this every Thursday. But last Thursday, it's like only 2 in 2 years that I haven't done. Last Thursday, I just couldn't go live because of being in the middle of COVID. And I did a Facebook announcement and an Instagram announcement. And yeah, like my shaver had broken and all of that stuff was going on. So what I thought I would do tonight, because I missed last Thursday, this is really about connecting. And I think you know that my goal with Thursday Live has never been to try and be like I am on a weekend at Northridge. And I'm excited about the weekend coming up. It's going to be great. I'll say something about that at the end. But this isn't about putting together a spiritual talk and some kind of sermon or great constructed thought. Thursday Live is where, really for the first time in my 30 years as pastor of Northridge Church, I can connect on a really personal basis. And so it is about, focusing spiritually, making spiritual application, breaking away from everything that's pressing on us in life and making sure we, just have a couple of minutes where we focus on Jesus, but it's more out of what I'm experiencing in my life. So I thought that I should maybe share a bit about my COVID experience with you. And I mean, not everybody's had COVID. Some of you have, some of you haven't. In fact, that'd be interesting. How many of you have, how many of you haven't? But it's this, I just thought I'd share my experience and then make a point of application to, my spiritual life, our spiritual life, something that might, help you a little bit maybe. And then just talk about a couple other things. So if you're good with that, that'll be great. And I want you to know that my experience will not be anyone else's experience as it relates to COVID itself. Spiritually, I think we can have similar experiences, but as it relates to the physical experience of COVID, the one thing we're learning about this crazy virus is that it's like no two people experience it exactly the same. And it's true there are some pretty common symptoms, all of which, or most of which, that I had, but it's not true how it impacts. And I want to speak to that a little bit. I don't want you to think that as I tell you about my COVID experience, I'm telling you that you'll go through it like I went through it. There are people who have been extremely healthy and younger than me who got knocked down and burnt up by this thing in a way that I didn't experience. And we know that people have actually died from this, a good number of people. And we mourn for their families. We mourn for the loss of them. Any of you who lost someone to COVID, to lose anyone for any reason is a big deal. But here I am talking about COVID. And for those of you who lost someone to COVID, I want you to know I don't take the grief of that lightly. The blame isn't placed upon them. And that's another thing that I have a real problem with in this world. People are blaming people for what they did and didn't do and for getting COVID and doing this, and everything's about blaming that. It's ridiculous. Everybody responds differently. Everybody has to make their own personal choices. And I am not here to relieve or to create fear in anybody. But I've had an experience with it. And as the pastor of Northridge Church and as the person who leads out this spiritual breakaway time with you on Thursday Live, why not talk about it? And just, not belabor it, but just talk about it. And just so you know, I have two pieces of paper here. This one is the one where on Monday of August 30th, I got a positive COVID test. And it was I knew I had it. I knew I had it. The doctor said, "You knew you had it, right?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so I met with a doctor, went through the different things that I could do. And all of us have to have a doctor that we trust and follow their prescriptions. I'm not going to follow the news media's prescriptions. I'm not going to follow strangers' prescriptions. I'm going to follow my own particular doctor's prescriptions on these things. And I'm going to choose my doctor according to what I think would work best for me, and same with Roxanne and my family. And then a week and a day later, I would have gotten the test earlier, but it was a weekend and it was a Labor Day weekend, so I couldn't get it done because I felt like by Saturday, really, I would have had a negative COVID test, if not before that. But on Tuesday, following Labor Day, I got this negative COVID test, and so definitely negative. And many of you have said, I look better. So I definitely look better and feel great. But here's it's weird because Roxanne and I have we have lived our lives. There are some people who still haven't broken out of their homes, still haven't done those things. No judgment. Every person needs to make their own decisions. We've taken the precautions that we feel like are right for us. And then we've been appropriately cautious and careful in our lives while still living our lives and going forward and, being a part of our community and that kind of thing. But we'd been doing that for a year and a half. And Roxanne and I were sick in March of 2020, really quite sick. We were traveling when this thing really hit, came back home to Michigan, and she was more sick than I was, but we had similar symptoms. But she had real bad breathing issues, and some of the symptoms didn't seem to be there in the sickness that we had. We didn't have any kind of discernible fever at the time. We didn't lose taste or smell at the time, but that wasn't even known. But man, many of the other things were there, and she was worse than we did. And of course, we couldn't get tests then. This was in the real early stages of the COVID pandemic, and it was before tests. We called our doctor, we asked, and they said, we can't get you tested, so be careful, etc. We kind of thought we had experienced COVID, but we still were appropriate in our caution and our care and all those things. But we went a year and a half or so, and we had no encounter with any kind of sickness at all during that time, and we were living our lives. And so I woke up on Saturday night. This was a week and a half ago. And really it was Sunday morning, about 1 a.m, and I felt a hitch in my, was weird. And it was deeper than it would have normally been. Wasn't scary, it wasn't dangerous, but it was there. And I went, and I couldn't go back to sleep because I wonder. And then I finally went back to sleep, and Sunday morning I woke up and I had a really severe headache. And the headache was the one thing that was really quite severe in my experience. And it was at the beginning, Sunday morning, and it went all the way through to about the Friday. And it just covered it. As I went through all the other symptoms and got rid of them, the headache was there. And I couldn't cover the headache with ibuprofen or with Tylenol. It just didn't go away. So I had that headache, and then I felt progression of, a little bit of cough. And then I started, got the sore throat thing, the headache thing was persisting. My skin was that real sensitive crawling thing. And I didn't start it with a fever on Sunday, but Monday then the fever began. That's when I got the test. It was definitely positive. And I did everything I could to then fight this thing. And the one thing that my doctor really wanted me to do, I did some vitamin regimens and some other regimens that were really important to me that I felt like were good for therapeutic reasons, at least to give me a fighting shot. But the one thing the doctor said, you really need to do this is the shot, is you need to get a monoclonal antibody treatment. And they're available. And my wife, Roxanne, who's my great support, took such good care of me, got me the appointment that day on Monday. It was like a 7-hour experience because, getting in was not easy. But in that meantime, I was around hundreds of people who were positive for COVID. And it wasn't a community of blame. It wasn't like, oh, it's a pandemic for the vaccinated or a pandemic for the unvaccinated. It wasn't that. It was all of us had COVID. And the vast majority of people in that community that I met at this monoclonal antibody treatment center were fully vaccinated. And they were, full-blown COVID experiences. It was something. I sat next to a teacher in particular, a young lady. She was in her mid to late 30s, and she was just laid out sick, fully vaccinated. She's a teacher, and her parents were full out sick, fully vaccinated, and it's like it was crazy. And then of course there were some unvaccinated people there, but the majority were fully vaccinated. And it was like, but this monoclonal treatment, this antibody treatment, I got it. And that night, it was like my body was at war with itself. And that was my worst night. But then Tuesday, bad day, but started getting better within 24 hours of that monoclonal treatment, and symptoms started waning. And then Wednesday really progressed forward well. And then by Wednesday night, 48 hours after that treatment, most of the symptoms had subsided pretty significantly. Headache still was there. And Thursday started really feeling better. And a lot of people have extreme fatigue. I didn't have extreme fatigue. I didn't feel energized to study the book of the Revelation or anything. But it's like, and reading wasn't my favorite activity because of the way my head felt. So I just kind of, watched things. But Thursday, I really progressed forward. By Friday, I was basically symptom-free except for that lingering, almost like a caffeine-induced headache that was there. It wasn't piercing at that time. It was there. But by Saturday then, I felt like I could have gotten the COVID test and it would have been negative, and started getting my energy back and feeling better every day. So it was like a weird progression. But I caution and prevention, very, very important. Taking appropriate actions, that's really important. But, COVID is something that it's transmittable in the air, it's an aerosol thing. And this new Delta variant seems to be really going crazy. And so we're going to get it. And so, yeah, prevention's great. But when you get it, whether fully vaccinated or not fully vaccinated, therapeutics are really, really important to the best of your ability, and many states, including Michigan, have monoclonal antibiotic treatment centers. And I just highly recommend it. Everyone I've talked to and everyone that I've experienced, that within 48 hours kind of made the difference. And of course, then there was prayer. And I appreciate so many of you praying for me, and thank you for that. And but I don't want to say that. I do want to say we should fight this thing therapeutically if we get it. We should try prevention. But if we get it, we should fight it to the best of our ability with therapeutics and work with our doctors on that and do everything we can. And I'd encourage you to get the monoclonal antibody treatment. And my doctor said the people that ultimately seem to suffer the worst through COVID, and many of those who have died, they fought it on their own too long. And so we were able to monitor my oxygen blood. It's just a little clip that you put on your finger. It's very inexpensive, but it monitors the oxygen levels in your blood. And he said, if you ever get down to where you can't get over 90, 91, you need to go to a hospital and you need to have them, work with you on that, because you can't fight this on your own. When you try and fight it on your own, that's when it can beat you. And I'm not saying this works for everybody. I'm saying it certainly proved to be true to me. And this doctor said, you'll beat this thing. He looked at me and he said, you will beat this thing as long as you don't do stupid stuff and try and, man your way through it and tough your way through it. And so I want to encourage you to do the same thing if you ever get this thing. But, and then, we had people praying, and I thank you for those of you who prayed with me on this thing. And I don't want to make light of this thing. I'm thankful I came through it. It's God's grace. But can I just tell you, I am so grateful for and impressed by the medical community. I mean, here I am, full-blown COVID, and I go into the doctor's office, and the nurses, I have to pull down the mask so they can give me the test, and I'm right there in that room with her, and she's working with me and taking my vitals and doing that. They run the test. It was a rapid test, and then the doctor comes in, and he's engaging me, and he's working with me, and I'm like, my gosh, they're running into the fire. They're putting themselves at risk like that. It's just with prevention being the big thing. I was so grateful for them, and then sent me to that monoclonal antibody treatment center, and I mean, dozens of people working these things, and yeah, they're masked and they have their shields, but they're right there. All of us have full-blown COVID. I mean, this symptomatic expressed COVID. All of us have positive reading, and they're right there serving us and helping us and supporting us and taking care of us and giving us this treatment. I've just never been so impressed. And for those of you who are in the medical community, I know many of you are exhausted. This has been going on far too long. But can I just, as one person who's gone through it and was served by people in your peers, people in your community, I just want to thank you. I'm so grateful. I respect you so much. And we as Americans really need to celebrate those in the medical profession doing this. You're the real heroes. And I really appreciate it. But what I wanted to really do was I wanted to give you, that's kind of enough. And I don't know what you guys are saying over here. You spell treatment. Oh, Wayne, can you spell the treatment? Brad had monoclonal. Yeah, MONOCHLONAL, I think, monoclonal. I'm doing that from my memory. But thank the Lord for those amazing professional doctors and nurses. Thanks, Wayne. I agree with that. Thanks for those people. Yeah, you guys are right with me. And it is, I mean, man, they're servants of God in this case. And I just want you to know, we don't control our destiny in the end. We can do everything we can. Roxanne and I really worked hard to be appropriate in the way we lived and prevention. She has underlying breathing weaknesses that I've been really worried about for the last year and a half, and more susceptible to lung stuff than me. And so we really tried the prevention thing. But I just need you to know, it doesn't matter how hard you work at it. And these people, fully vaccinated, those unvaccinated doing other things, it's like, it doesn't matter how much you try and control your world, you're not in control. I wasn't. And quite frankly, we were worried about Roxanne. Roxanne never got it. And we do everything together. And she didn't get it, and I don't get it. You usually most contagious a couple days before symptoms than the first day or two of symptoms. And I mean, we sleep in the same room, in the same bed, and it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, we eat together, we sit on couch together, we work together, and she didn't get it. And it's crazy. And that's grace, and I'm so grateful. But you can't control this. And this is why this blame game and this anger thing and people pointing their fingers at different people, it's your fault, and it's just ludicrous. And at the same time, once we do get it, dive into therapeutic, dive into everything you can. It doesn't matter what media says, it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what politics says, it doesn't matter this. Do everything you can. You've got one life. Do everything you can, but in the end, you're not in control. And I knew I wasn't in control. And so we did what we could, and we prayed, and we depended on it. And that's where I want to go to now, the faith issue. And a lot of people build their faith on God giving them only good things. I'm worshiping you, God. You gave me the job I want. I'm worshiping you, God. You healed my family member that was sick. I'm worshiping you when all things go good. But look at God's word. God's good, and God's worthy to be worshipped no matter what my experience. He was good during the year and a half that I didn't get it. And he was just as good when I did get it. And what I want you to understand and what I want you to see is that, it's monoclonal, by the way, MONOCLONAL, monoclonal, MONOCLONAL antibody treatment. And I can't recommend it more highly. But once you get this thing, I mean, we're not in control. But so God was good when I didn't have it, and God was equally as good when I did have it. And so what I want you to see is that I want you to see the impact on faith that experiences like this have. It doesn't change. If you have true faith in Jesus Christ, who's the same yesterday, today, and forever, who's always good, who's always holy, who's always righteous, who's always doing, what's best for us in his kingdom plans forever, including when we die and get to step from this life into the reality of our eternal life with him. When you have an experience like that, it shouldn't impact your faith. It should just change. It doesn't change your faith. It'll impact your faith. It doesn't change your faith. It should change the emphasis of your faith. And, I was, when we were in the prevention mode, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from the evil one, protect us, give us wisdom, those kind of things. And so the emphasis of our faith was on prevention. When I got it, the emphasis of my faith now became, help me depend on you, help me to trust you, help me to be at peace that your kingdom's going to come, your will's going to be done. I believe your plan for me, God, though it might be different than the plan I have for myself, is perfect. It's unique to me. It's perfect for me. And it doesn't matter how this ends. I want to get better. I want you to heal me. It doesn't matter how this ends. You're good. You're righteous. You're my Father in heaven, which is where I get to spend eternity because of what Jesus did for me on the cross. But it changes my emphasis of faith, what I'm depending on him for, what I'm needing from him. Peace in the midst of the storm, grace in the midst of the storm, comfort in the midst of the storm. And I will say, this is how it impacts your faith. It impacted mine. It strengthens it. It strengthens it, being able to depend upon him in moments of weakness and stuff. And one last thing, it just renews and reaffirms the value of faith. Everybody has faith. Most people have faith in the wrong thing. But my faith is in Jesus Christ, who, as the Revelation says, was and is and always will be the same yesterday, today, and forever. And it just reaffirms I can trust him no matter what I'm going through. I saw it with my dad when my dad was dying of pancreatic cancer. You can't scare me with heaven, he said. You can't scare me with heaven. You see, the emphasis of his faith changed, but his faith didn't change. It was in Jesus Christ, no matter what happens. And I just really want to encourage you, because we live in a world where it's like, I'll worship when I feel like worshiping because good things are happening, and I'll not worship God when things aren't going good because he's, not being who he said he'd be to me. He's not being good and all that. Sorry for hitting that. And it's just ridiculous. We don't trust in Jesus so that we'll have a good job. We trust in Jesus because he's the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Redeemer of the world, who loves us, whose grace is sufficient no matter what we experience, even death, who's purchased for us the hope of eternal life. And though we grieve in physical loss and even death, not without hope because of Jesus. That's who our faith's in. It's not to get good things from God, gold stars on the forehead. It's because without him, we don't have life or fullness. And so that's kind of my COVID experience. And so my faith changed. And when I'm feeling great, I devour scripture more and I pray differently. And, I'm writing, I'm reading, I'm, thinking about leading Northridge and thinking about this relationship. During COVID, the emphasis of my faith changed. Where I needed Jesus is like the anxiety. Give me peace. Don't be anxious for anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known to God, and he'll replace your anxiety with peace that passes understanding. That was the emphasis during COVID. Trusting that he knows what's best for me as to my destiny. I wanted to get better. Roxanne wanted me to get better. My kids wanted me to get better. You wanted me to get better. But your kingdom come, God. Your will be done. Because your plan's best no matter what it is. And it's easier to say in good times than it is in difficult times. But this is real. If we're going to really have faith in Jesus, it needs to be real faith no matter what we're experiencing. I don't know what you're experiencing these days. Hope it's not COVID. But I want you to have real faith in Jesus, which gives you the constant in life no matter what it is you're experiencing. And worship him, not because good things are happening to you. Worship him because he's worthy of worship. And I'm excited about this fall and this whole new ministry season, which begins starting September 11th and 12th, this Saturday and Sunday at Northridge. because my whole emphasis is going to be about, and you'll hear this in my talk on the weekend, it's an outside service at Plymouth, the Plymouth campus, and then at all of our regional campuses, you'll hear the same thing online. You'll hear it. But I want to focus on helping people discover or rediscover the real Jesus and his real truth, not the cultural substitute Jesuses that have been created. And I can't wait to get into it. And this is kind of a little bit of a forerunner to it, I guess. But really excited about the weekend. Going to start the series on the Revelation. And I think it's going to be a different kind of series than you would expect it to be. And it's going to be focused on Jesus, because if you look at the opening line of the Revelation, it's the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not the revelation of, pre-mill, post-mill, on-mill, pre-trib, mid-trib, pre-rat. It's the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's about revealing Jesus Christ, who was and is to come, who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. And the study of the Revelation should make us fall in love with Jesus, not fall in love with the study of the end times, And I can't wait to get into it this weekend. I hope that you'll be there. And there's one last challenge that I really want to give you. And then I'm going to pray and we'll be done, okay? But this last challenge is about something that I saw this last weekend. And I didn't watch it live. I was feeling pretty sick, but I did watch a recording of it. The University of Michigan had their first football game in their stadium with a crowd. And I'm going to talk about the University of Michigan, but it happened in stadiums all around the country, and red states and blue states and purple states and all kinds of states. Football stands filled with people for the football season. But the University of Michigan, go blue, played Western Michigan. And it was a great game, good game. But 109,000 people gathered for love of football in the University of Michigan Stadium. 109,000. I mean, I looked at it's like they were cheek to cheek, butt cheek to butt cheek, face cheek to face cheek, shoulder to shoulder. And there might have been some with masks on in that stadium. I didn't see any. It's not like I was looking with a microscope or anything, microfying glass. But it's like 109,000 people gathered for love of football. And everybody was all excited about it. These are the same people that call Labor Day super spreader event and all that different stuff, but whatever. But here's what it made me think of. We're having church, in-person church. We've been having it for a year. And we're not filling our stadium. People still part of Northridge. Many of you attend online. That's great. Glad to have you, but I mean, it's not that. It's not that Northridge isn't the same Northridge. It is. Reaching new people all the time. It's an amazing experience. But people haven't started packing our church butt cheek to butt cheek and shoulder to shoulder and face cheek to face cheek for love of worshiping Jesus. So 109,000 people in Michigan Stadium, hundreds of thousands of people in stadiums all over the country for love of a pigskin. And you hear these commentators talk, it was like a worship experience for them. And that's not having a church. And a lot of people go, at church, we're inside and all that. Well, it's a fairly safe environment the way we've created it. I get it. But this weekend, September 11th and 12th at the Plymouth campus, it's an outside service. And my prayer is, and this isn't an attack, my prayer is that we who claim love for Jesus will show our passion and love for Jesus by coming to gather together to worship to the same extent that people who love football were willing to do that this last weekend. It's my thing. Be cautious, do what you need to do. It's great. Roxanne and I make our choices, you make your choices, but come on. For the love of Jesus, we get together and worship. So much more important, so much more meaningful, so much more essential, so much more valuable, so much more significant and life-changing and eternal than football. We need to get in the game on this. And especially if you have arguments about indoor, okay. Even though, did you see that stadium? It was like there was no, people sneeze, cough, and have the breathe. Doesn't matter where you are when you're mouth to mouth on this thing. It's just crazy. But it's my prayer for church, that for love of worshiping Jesus, we gather together and we start showing the world that our faith and our passion and our commitment to Jesus is worthy of this thing. And just so you know, the University of Michigan football game was broadcast. So we're going to keep doing online church. We're going to keep broadcasting this. It's still going to be available on YouTube, and you put it on your TVs. That's great. They broadcast the University of Michigan football game too. And yet 109,000 people filled that stadium to be in that live experience. Why? Because there's something about experiencing that game live with a bunch of other people. Well, let me just tell you, there's something about gathering with other believers so in love with Jesus, they want to be there experiencing it together. And it just kind of talks about what Jesus talked about. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, there am I in the midst. There's something about that experience. And let's do it for Jesus. That's my encouragement. But we'll keep broadcasting it just like the University of Michigan does. The church should not be rather empty because we do online church. Just like the football stadiums aren't empty even though they broadcast great broadcasts of the football games. So that's my challenge. And I hope that makes sense to you. And I want you to know that's not about beating anybody up. It's not about judging anybody. It's not about getting after anybody. It's not about, it's just really, man, as a pastor, I want us to care that much about worshiping and experiencing Jesus that way. All right. And looking over here to a bunch of you, make that Hebrews 10:25. Sorry, Gail Neal said, don't forsake the gathering of yourselves together as the manner of some is, but so much the more as the day approaches. Great passage of Scripture. And I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you for your prayers. So many gracious comments and so many gracious thoughts. It was really special to me when I announced that I had COVID on Instagram and Facebook. I was a little bit fearful of it because social media tends to be a place where people love to just start filling the airwaves with their poison vitriol and all of that. And that's not what happened. In the wake of my announcement that I got COVID, there wasn't blame, there wasn't pointing fingers, there wasn't attacking me. It was just so many kind and supportive and gracious comments, and the commitment to pray for me and for Roxanne because I didn't want her to get it. And I'm just grateful. Thank you. And again, to those of you in the medical community, thank you. And again, for those of you who love football, me too, love football. But I love Jesus more. And I want us to prove to the world that love of Jesus is more exciting and creates greater passion and enthusiasm and commitment than love of football in our culture. It's my goal. And hopefully we get to do it. All right. With that, we're going to pray and I'll say goodbye. God, thank you so much for Jesus. I thank you that our faith doesn't have to vacillate with our circumstances because Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so when we really believe in the real Jesus and his real truth, not some made up cultural idea of Jesus or religious idea of Jesus, but the real Jesus, when our faith is in him, no matter what's happening in our lives or our world, our faith doesn't have to vacillate. The emphasis of our faith will change. what I was emphasizing in my trust for you, what I was needing in my trust of you during the COVID experience was very different than right now. But my faith in you is the same. And in fact, it's been reaffirmed, renewed, and strengthened. And I pray that you do for the same for all of us. Help each of us. We're all dealing with life in different ways. And God, I just pray that you would help us to experience your grace, which is sufficient, and faith in you, which becomes our constant. And God, I know there's a potential in what I shared about football versus gathering for Jesus there to be a sense of guilt in people and shame and all that. You know that wasn't my heart. My heart is for us as believers to reflect our passion and love for you in this world in greater degrees than people who love the entertainment of our culture. And I just pray that you'd help us at Northridge to be that. And I'll thank you for it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, with that, let's see. I've got a couple of text messages I want to look at. Oh, yeah. I haven't shown Lincoln. Where is he? Here. Lincoln's down here. Thank you. Roxanne sent me a text. And I don't know what part of Lincoln we can see. There he is. There's my Lincoln. Yeah, buddy. Yeah, buddy. So Lincoln, from Lincoln, and by the way, during my COVID experience, he was my constant companion, and I did a lot of research about whether he was at risk in there and all that different stuff. The best we could find is no, and he didn't want to be separated from me. And I was totally isolated from Roxanne. We were able to totally isolate different sections of our home, and then she was able to put food. And this is, as my gratitude towards the medical field, so my gratitude towards my wonderful partner and mate and spouse in life, Roxanne. She, pushed food through to my section of the thing, made sure I was on my therapeutics that I needed to be on, and support, encouraged me. We communicated through, texting and that kind of thing. And so can I just tell you the worst thing about this COVID experience is that it is a lonely experience when you travel it alone. It's lonely, which is another emphasis of my faith during the time. Because Roxanne and I do life together, and we couldn't do life together in the same way. And the thing I was most grateful for when I got my negative diagnosis was that I could come out and hug my wife. And that's exactly what I did. So anyway, so thanks to her, and thanks to you. And this weekend, it's going to be a great weekend in Northridge Church as we start the series, The Revelation, and I kind of set the whole ministry season before you, and it's going to be great worship outside. I'm so excited. The screens are already going up there, and it's going to be broadcast all of our different regionals and online. It's going to be great. Let's fill up the space as we worship Jesus, okay, everybody? And then, Lord willing, next week, I'll see you at Thursday Live. Thanks, everybody, from Lincoln and from me. Bye-bye.